keeping the discipline towards the goal you're trying to do is what's going to win out. I've seen it time and time again. And the discernment just has to do with making sure you're working with the right people, not really collecting your thoughts on the rational and the emotional thoughts that you have every day, and making sure you're not doing a wrong investment or chasing something you shouldn't be chasing, or going down a rabbit hole of a quick get rich quick scheme that ends up being fraudulent or something. I mean, being discerning in this world, matters.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Brad Barrett, who's going to share how to make your money matter. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes from Charlie Munger. It's so simple. You need to spend less than you earn. Invest shrewdly. Avoid toxic people and toxic activities. Try to keep learning all your life. And do a lot of deferred gratification. If you do all those things, you are almost certain to succeed. And if you don't, you're going to need a lot of luck. And if you don't want to need a lot of luck, you want to go in a game where you're very likely to win without having any unusual luck. I wish I knew that when I was 20. I know it now. There are parts of that I do really, really well. There's parts of it that I struggle with. But if I look around, I've done well. And so I would say it is good advice. Let me ask you a question. Are you aware of your money beliefs, how you react behaviorally and unintentionally towards money? If you've been listening for a while, it's a subject we cover from time to time, and a lot has to do with our opening question. I think it's time just to go back and revisit and remember. As we grow, our behaviors may change, and then it's time to revisit them, peel back another layer to see what we've learned and how we've changed, and then what's the next step? Most of us are never going to be perfect, but we can improve. We also go through major shifts when we switch from earnings to retirement. And then another set of behaviors kick in. And that's one of the things to work on and to realize what's coming and to set ourselves up financially for that, as well as behaviorally for that. Brad Barrett is managing director with One Capital Management. He advises private individuals and families on their personal investments and advanced planning needs. He oversees the firm's retirement and corporate services practices. He's managed nearly $5 billion for thousands of people across the U.S. He's author of the book, Retire Right, Secure the Path to Your Retirement. And he hosts 2 podcasts, Make Your Money Matter and Pension Attention. Let's meet Brad. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Brad Barrett. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh, great question. Family dynamic was interesting for me. I was an oldest. I had 2 younger sisters. Parents split when I was around 10 or 11. But I think what was profound about money at that point, because at that age, I think for many of us, we're not totally aware of money or what it means to us. And something cathartic happened in my life, like many people watching or listening here would relate, maybe not to this, but in general, something happens that gets us to learn about money. My dad had worked for a company for, 20 plus years, a smaller company that was acquired by a bigger company, and then a bigger company, and then that bigger company ended up going bankrupt. And I was 16 years old. It was the summer of my 16th birthday. I saved up money to get a car just from allowances and just, stuff like that. And needless to say, we changed everything, right? We had to, just dial back everything, get new cars. My dad had to travel going from here in the Los Angeles area all the way down to like the Anaheim area, which is a 2-hour drive each way every day out of bankruptcy. Just kind of really changed our mindset, right? And so I hadn't had a job before. And I tell people to this day, Rocky, I never flipped a burger. I walked into Washington Mutual, God rest their soul, and demanded a job. I don't know what I said. I kind of blacked out, and I was able to get a teller job. And I remember God just touching my heart there. And I my whole reason why I wanted to do that was my dad was in telecommunications. My mom was a teacher. Grandfather was in military. No financial acumen, no financial backgrounds per se in any one of those categories. There was academics going on. Both my parents had MBAs, so there was academics behind it, but not necessarily related to money by any means. And when that happened in my life, the first part of it was anger. I was like, how could this happen to a man I revere? Like it wasn't even his fault, so on and so forth. And I took that as a lesson to learn everything I could about money, right? That was my why, if you will. And then through that process, I realized the second part of why I was doing it was when God touched my heart and said, this is what I want you to do for your life. And so I've been in this business, the financial services industry, for 20 years now, and I'm only 36 years old. Started when I was 16. Anyways, so I worked there in high school, graduated, went to undergrad, got my economics degree, started my practice. Actually, my sophomore year roommate was actually my first client, and was at a broker dealer at the time, and just expanded from the broker dealer, hooked up with my partners here at One Capital almost 15 years ago now. And we were at about $500 million or so in assets under management at that time. And we're today just over 5 billion. And so it's been a great growth. And that's not to say about the numbers. It was just the amount of families we're able to help. And I come from it from my financial advisor background, with my background, simply meeting with them and empathizing with their one fear that they almost don't even know they're asking, which is, am I going to lose all my money? Right? Is investing risky? Can I do it? Is it right for me? And so on and so forth. And the biggest question being, will I have enough? Will I have enough to do what I want to do? Right? And I share with them when it's appropriate that their biggest fear I've actually lived through. And I'm able to sit kneecap to kneecap with them. And I've been really blessed to do that for now almost 2 decades. So that's a high level view of the background and what kind of got me into money. And I think through that process of getting my licenses, getting my certified financial planner designation, I was just adding to my acumen that I was kind of learning from my experience of my background in money. And that's why I'm here today.
Did you say your dad had an MBA?
He did, yeah.
And yet they didn't teach him about how to make money or build wealth?
No, and actually, Rocky, you hit on a point that I talk about a lot, right? I mean, look, think about it, right? Forget an MBA or undergrad, go back to high school even. I mean, it's funny, we teach home economics still, right? Or we team, home ec, and we talk about, how to cook things and do basic stuff, but no one tells you what a mortgage is. No one tells you what 20% down means and why you should have a mortgage and something that's going to be typically one of the largest assets a household holds. No one tells you about budgeting or savings or any of these 25% rules or the 70-20-10 rule or any of the rules that I employ with clients on a cash flow basis, what debt means to them. I mean, we have 18-year-olds right now walking into college campuses, really never even hearing about a credit card before. And they walk down to their first freshman year class in fall semester, bombarded with credit card companies seeking out 18-year-olds. So yeah, the education is not there. And I think a lot of us, I think one of the big misnomers out there is that someone, and I deal with this a lot as a practice, and it's men and women. It's not just, one side in the sense of there's a bit of a pride factor in what they do or how much they earn. But the reality is you might earn enough money, or you might have a background in education. Maybe even my sister's an aeronautical engineer. I mean, she's the smartest in our family by far, but she tells me all the time, she's like, I don't know anything about money. So we have these smarts, this intellect in certain areas of our lives. And I've always believed you want to partner to your weaknesses. It's okay to be an aeronautical engineer in my sister's case, but it's okay to partner with a financial advisor because she may make good money and have really good, keeping us in the air, if you will, which is literally her job. And, still not know what to do with her 401k. So I think it's an important role, and money is obviously a very important tool, but it is just that. It's not the end all be all. It's, it's very much a tool, and it's important that we put it in its place in our life, I guess.
Do they still teach econ? I thought they stopped teaching.
As I said that, who knows? Maybe they don't. I guess when I was still in high school, which again, I guess is 20 years ago now, they were teaching home ec, or they were doing that, but they probably changed it at this point.
Yeah,
Point of the matter is there, right? They probably don't, which is even more to my point, right? They're teaching us algebra, they're teaching us how to get to college, but a lot of people don't go to college nowadays, and they're trying to do other income sources, and we're walking out with no education around any sort of things that'll help us financially and keep us, out of debt with some money in the bank. You can teach work ethic, right? But it's hard to really instill how you keep it.
I challenge that we still teach work ethic too.
That's a whole other podcast for us to talk about, right?
Why do you think we spend so little time teaching money?
I have asked myself that for so long. And I think just in the past decade, maybe even less than that, maybe the last 5 years or so, I think we're seeing this, in fact, we're even running the financial independence is now becoming like a vernacular, right? We've seen it. I know you've spoken about it with some of your guests, and I think it's a great subject matter, but I feel like, to your point, we're teaching it too late. I do not know why. If we're lucky in high school, we may be taking one economics 101 class to teach the basics of supply and demand, right? Which is fine. But understanding how powerful a notion of compound interest is, rule of 72, I mean, just some basic stuff that you learn when you start learning about investing or savings or just overall time value of money, if you will. So yeah, I would love to see it in there. In fact, for years, my mom was a teacher. And when I was in my mid 20s, I was probably 6-7 years in the business. I had done something called Kids Finance Coach through another guy. And we were my mom was a second grade teacher and a fourth grade teacher. So we're going way primary school here, right, Rocky? But the point was I wanted to teach them about what a bank, I did very simple subject matters, right? Like, what's a bank? What's a dollar? You know what I mean? And just kind of, again, you're talking to, again, 8-year-olds and like 10-year-olds here. So you got to keep it level, right? But that same matter, at least they have an idea of what that means to them, other than mom and dad just giving them money when they ask for it, kind of thing, which, by the way, leads into the work ethic and the, receiving it versus earning it philosophy, if you will.
That it does. Yeah, it's surprising how little money is taught. And people are like, well, they should teach it in the school. But at the same point, if teachers don't understand money, they can't teach money. And even if you give them a curriculum, I still don't think they get it. I think there's more to money than just the logic or the basics of money. I think there's a whole emotional side and a psychological side to it as well that we don't talk about as much mainstream as we need to. Now, we talk about it here all the time because I get it, but it is not the norm.
It isn't. And you're right. It's a struggle, right? If you were to give someone a curriculum, let's say, in some sort of basic numbers or financial acumen, right, being taught by someone who hasn't gone through it themselves, there would have to be some sort of designation or credentials for that course that would need to be given. And it's hard, right? I totally understand. Now, I think you hit on a great point that I talk about a lot on our show and our practice here at One Capital Management. I write about this a lot around the emotional and the psychological as it relates to money. And I think a lot of it has to do with just even take kids, as we're talking about, or as we get older, we all have, like, I call it behavioral financial DNA, right? Like no different than, like, there's really two forms of it, right? There's the God-given DNA, no different than the color of our eyes, or our hair or whatever was given to us, right? And then there's the circumstantial. By the way, this as nurture nature, right? We've heard that in just the overall world, right? But when it relates to money, we really, when we first meet with a client, we go through what's called a discovery process, right? That's our very first meeting with a client. And a lot of people think it's like this data gathering session, and it's not. It's actually less about the quantitative and it's more about the qualitative. It's really understanding who they are, because they walked into my office or on a Zoom meeting with me, referred by another client or maybe a CPA or an attorney or something like that. And our job as a good advisor is to kind of meet them where they're at whatever stage or season they're in life, but to also go back and ask the right questions to help them understand what they actually don't know about themselves around the topic of money, right? And you can think about this in different ways, but for someone who grew up, paycheck to paycheck, or maybe in food stamps or some gnarly situation, versus someone who grew up, let's say, with a silver spoon and everywhere in between, if you catch my drift here, right? You're going to have different views, different philosophies of money, because they've gone to, let's say, the school of hard knocks and the life skills, right? And then some of that's going to be backstopped by just who they are naturally, who they are just in their DNA. Are they more of a conservative person? Are they more of an aggressive person? Are they a risk taker? I mean, that kind of plays into the emotional side of how they place their money when it's earned or when it's saved. And so I think these stark differences are very unique. And I'll just share one example. This just happened not that long ago, about a month or two ago. I had, Rocky, within a matter of like 2 weeks, I had 2 new clients that had only been with me for about 3 months. And so typically in our first 90 days, we're doing a bunch of things in the discovery meeting, getting assets over, helping them do their financial plan, all that stuff. And in the review meeting for both of these people that happened within 2 weeks, there was something brought up on the first client that basically said, hey, just to be clear on my financial plan and how I want to run money that came from your discovery meeting was, I want to live for today. I want to spend everything I possibly can. And I was asking him more about that. And it came out that his mom and dad both died within a year of each other at the age of 58. One was out of a tumor that happened 7 months after he retired, which was a terrible situation, right? And then the mom, basically what they said was she died of heartbreak. It was a whole thing. And we've heard that story before. And that's one thing. So his notion, again, this was, by the way, he was a 45-year-old man at this point, right? 40. His notion, right, was very much, very, very much that he wanted to live for today and have the money to be able to live, right? And that came after all of his formidable years, right, of the learning everything and getting to coming of age and getting into his career. At that point, he was like 15 years into his career at that point. 2 weeks later, I have a client, completely separate client, who in the discovery meeting was talking about money, and her concern was the longevity of money. And again, more questions were asked after the discovery meeting, and found out that her parents are currently, she was an older client, her parents were 98 and like 96 or 97, fully in good health. And her concern was very much that she would outlive her money. And so I use it as an example simply to say that in my own practice, within a matter of 2 weeks, I had very different behavioral financial reasons for what they wanted to do with their money that came later in life. This didn't come in their 20s when they were starting their career. This came through circumstantial behavioral stuff that happened later in life. And I just share that simply to say that the way we perceive money and the way it hits our hearts has a lot to do, with how we ultimately end up using it, how we ultimately end up saving it, and then ultimately, what kind of stress we allow it to bring on our lives.
Do you think it happened later in life, or do you think that's what they tied it to later in life? Meaning it was always underlying, but now they put a reason to it because they're like, aha, see, I knew it. It was because of X, right? And look, X happened.
It's a good question. from my experience, I'll just say in nearly 2 decades of being a financial advisor, I will say that it's I don't think it's one or the other. I do think it's both. I think there's a this, you can't be proven this, so it's hard. I only know these clients, but there is a DNA, there is a function of who they are leading into that circumstance that happened that then said that clicked for them and said, okay, I'm already this way in general. Now I'm more this way because of X, Y, or Z event. So I think it is both. I would agree. But I will say that I have noticed that the circumstantial part of our behavioral finance DNA tends to speak louder to us, right? It tends to move us further. It tends to move us into things like someone even listening to this right now who's struggling with something with finances. Maybe it's a blessing of finances. Maybe it's a debt situation or whatever it might be. The events that we live through are what kind of almost activate us. They activate, what's already been in us this whole time, if you will.
You mentioned that a lot of people don't even know this is going on underneath their behaviors. So were they aware of the reasons why, or even that they were behaving that way, or the underlying reasons, or did they not even consider it?
I don't think they considered it, and it's not their fault. It's not any one of our fault. I think it's one of those things where we don't attach who we don't attach like how we operate in life to a topic like money. And I try to attach that because money, if you think about it, and what I do for a living and why clients would work with me is to do what, right? To save, protect, and grow. I mean, it can be brought out into other things, but that's the general core, right? And when I ask the right questions and we start sitting with them and empathizing with them, and sometimes when it's appropriate, I'll share my story with them, it opens them up to realize it a little bit more. And I'll point blank say it sometimes. I said, that's actually, you're hitting on, a bias within a psychological nature of yours that you shared with me that actually I think is playing out in this context we might be having, or whether it's about a debt repayoff or something else. And I think it shows, it rears its head, if you will, right around, again, some event that has to do with maybe money, and then their who they are starts to come out, right? Maybe they had again, this is one of those things like, you might have heard this before, but money doesn't change you. You hear that sometimes with people, like money illuminates who you already are. So I think it's important that we change that saying that money changes a person. Like, money doesn't change them. It illuminates who they already are. If they were a giver, likely they're going to still be a giver. If they were mean, they're going to probably be a mean rich person. It doesn't, and I think we have this bias that we think it's going to change our lives, and sure, it's going to do some things for us. But if we don't, take care of the core of who we are, back to that point you made about it's always been there, money or any problems elsewhere is not going to change that. It's just going to illuminate who it already is and what it's already been.
And I agree with that. And that's why when people inherit money or they win the lottery, the money disappears because they go back to who they were, unless they make a very intentional decision to change who they are. How do most people react when you start to point this out to them?
If you do it, I think you have to know your client. So we call it KYC. You got to know your client and that's meeting them at where they're at. So I think how you say it, the right time at which you say it. I mean, you don't just want to come out of the gate being like, I know everything. Listen to me. You got to believe this, that, right? You have to kind of get to know them, build their trust, and then be able to, because remember, our job as an advisor is to help them with sometimes the things that they don't even know they need help with. And this is one of them, right? They're coming to me for, hey, I need your help with managing my IRA or my trust account or my 401k or building a financial plan and, building a debt scenario to help me pay down debt faster, or whatever it might be. But in that comes out through, again, meeting them where they're at, building the trust in them and helping them get to these points of, you're answering it this way. You're trying to pay off this debt, for example, but you're not fixing the cash flow problem, which means if we fix the debt, you're going to get right back into it. Do you see that pattern? And so when we start sharing it that way and use real life examples, it leads them to it illuminates and highlights, what they're doing, and they're trying to do a quick fix, if you will. And I really try to say, look, we can't do a quick fix. It's like a Band-Aid on an open wound. We have to really focus on some things and change the core. Now, by the way, Rocky, that example you gave, is a studied, we talk about it all the time. It's the stork analogy, right? Every one of us right now watching or listening, you could think of it like you're probably driving your car or on a run or something like that. I'm like, oh, if a stork just dropped off $1 million on my doorstep tomorrow, I would do this, this, and this, right? We've all thought it. It's okay. You know, I'd pay off my house. I'd help my mom out or whatever it might be, right? And by the way, plenty good, all great. But again, if you're in a situation, and I've come from experience in saying this, if you're in a situation where you're a spender and you are given money like that, I hate to break it to you, but odds are you will still spend it. It's just math and it's just psychology. And you're right, it can be changed. I do believe that. I do believe there's hope. I don't think that it's just like, you know, that's it and there you go. But it starts with action, and it starts with actually, you know, acknowledging it and then really trying to find someone that actually you like and can trust, because that does matter. If you're just finding a broker or someone just to talk to, I mean, you're not really building a relationship. And I think that matters when it comes to things like this.
Do people change that often? Like, are they willing? Like, how easy is it for you to get them to behave differently?
Obviously, one of the things I share with clients is I will never change who you are. And I mean that, because I don't believe you can. Only they can, through a lot of whatever they're trying to do. And I don't even know what those issues and things they might be trying to do, but I'll never try to change who they are. Our job is to highlight what they express they wanted to do. And what I found, Rocky, is that who someone is and then what they say or what their goals are tend to be, especially in the financial world, very different. Like very different. And my job is to close that gap. So an example I just used a minute ago, I have this all the time. Hey, I want to pay down this debt, you know, but I'm not willing to focus on my cash flow or my overspending. And I'm like, okay, well, then we're focusing on the symptom, not the disease. And so I think in helping them change that, it's more of a helping them help themselves, if that makes sense. It's giving them the tools to change. If they don't want to, I can't force them. I always say I can lead you to water. I can even give you some salt and make you thirsty, but I cannot make you drink the water. It is your money. It's your financial goals. You know, it's what you want to accomplish. But I think we need to do our best to meet them again where they're at and help them out where they need to be, and pray for change in that regard.
Is everything that we've talked about more on the behavioral side then?
I would say, yeah. And behavioral side tends to lead into the psychological. I mean, there's really, depends how you break that down, I guess, right? In the financial world, right? This is true of psychology as well, the conscious and the subconscious, but there's also the emotional and the rational. And I think when it comes to money in particular, because money is an interesting one, right? It plays on math, and math, you know, other than nowadays, is absolute, right? 2 + 2 does equal 4, friends. All right. Hate to break it to you, but I might have just, yeah, I'm sorry. That's just math. Okay. And in my world, imagine a financial advisor coming to you and say, yeah, 2 + 2 may not equal 4. You'd be like, yeah, I'm out, pieces. I'm not working with you. So, I mean, think about that, right? And so when you think about money, you think about math, think about numbers, and there's so much behind that. And so when you think about that, the emotions that we have a lot to do with fear biases that we've seen in our past. It very much comes open in investing all the time, right? I mean, someone who can stomach volatility versus someone who can't, I think says a lot. I mean, look, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it says a lot about probably past stuff in your life, maybe some traumas, some risk averse tendencies. There's just things that go on that it's important as an advisor to really see who they are. This is not a direct correlation, but it's an observation. And, you know, I think it's important that we address those things as it relates to, I sometimes ask my clients who've been with me for years, I'm like, which brain is talking? I ask them that a lot. Is it your brain or is it your stomach brain? You know, because it tends to come out a lot. And we see it in investing during market turmoil. We see it during, you know, disruption in general. And I always share people like, look, the one thing for certain is we will have uncertainty. So we all need to be a little bit more comfortable in planning and being okay with planning, because if you don't, then you're just kind of setting yourself up for letting those emotions take over. And that's the goal, is to make sure that the rational and logical wins out. You still want to have emotions. Emotions are good, but you don't, when's the last time you really, you know, based a good decision in your life, especially financial, on an emotion? You probably don't want to. You want to base it on fact, on data, on plan. Obviously, it's going to have some sort of probability to it. Nothing in life is for certain, but you start kind of making sure those two are working together versus one taking over the other.
And I would say most people, I think, are emotional with money. They are not logical and factual, and they don't do the math. And kind of where we started, nobody's been taught how to do the math, and they may understand the power of compounding. And even though they do, they still don't take action, which just blows my mind.
Well, and that has a lot to do with the need it now, have it now philosophy. I call it the Amazon theory. I mean, what Bezos did is brilliant, but he also created us all to like get things tonight or tomorrow. And if we don't, then we're not okay with it. And I think that definitely plays into how we invest. I mean, think about that. I mean, we all want to dream and fantasize about that get rich quick scheme. And the reality is there just isn't one. There just isn't one. I mean, Buffett said it best sometimes. I saw his quote the other day. I thought it was great. He says, I could teach someone how to be, no one wants to follow my philosophy because no one wants to get rich slowly. It was a beautiful statement, and it's so true.
There's a reason that this podcast makes no money. It's because nobody wants to get rich slowly. And after a couple years of doing this, I realized that, and Warren said it correctly. I've used that quote many times. It's like, I can teach anyone to become a millionaire. It's probably going to take 10 years.
Yeah.
And most people are like, no, I'm out. And I'm like, okay. And they never, ever come close, ever, because they just won't do the work. And it's not that hard. It's actually pretty simple, and it's pretty easy math.
It really comes down to two things. What's crazy about that to me, and I've seen that a lot, Rocky. It's so true. And it's like, if you're listening to this right now, you've survived everything you thought you wouldn't. If you're living and breathing, I don't care what condition you're in, you've survived everything you thought you wouldn't. Now, go into tomorrow, go into next month, go into 5 months and in a year and so on and so forth. It's amazing how time stacks up. And you're right. It is not that hard. I tell people like, look, this is not that hard. It actually comes down to 2 Ds. I call it. It's discipline and discernment. Both are equal of value. Discipline just talks about the consistency. Like, many times I met people that the motivation is very different than discipline, by the way. I relate it to the person you talk to at 9 a.m. who's all jacked up on coffee, ready to go for the day. I want to talk to that same person at 3 p.m., the dog days of the dog, hours of the afternoon. Are you still motivated? And that's, by the way, just in one day. So the point is, discipline has to do with the relentless consistency of something, not being swayed by a fad or whatever else is coming out, like do side hustle, this and that. I mean, those are all great ethics to work towards, sure, but keeping the discipline towards the goal you're trying to do is what's going to win out. I've seen it time and time again. And the discernment just has to do with making sure you're working with the right people, not really collecting your thoughts on the rational and the emotional thoughts that you have every day, and making sure you're not doing a wrong investment or chasing something you shouldn't be chasing, or going down a rabbit hole of a quick get rich quick scheme that ends up being fraudulent or something. I mean, being discerning in this world, matters. And there's a lot of bad people out there, sadly, especially when it comes to money. So having a good brain on yourself to know who to work with, who not to work with, and then ultimately keeping your discipline, it will work. It just won't work by tomorrow. And I think you need to be okay with that.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. And I don't even know that it's bad people as much as it is uninformed people. So I'll be honest, I know you're a financial planner. We make fun of financial planners, not in the sense of just most financial planners are salespeople.
Totally.
They don't even understand finances. And when you start to listen to them, that's what I do. I listen to what people say because they'll tell me their financial story in the words and in the comments they make. So when my financial planner is struggling to make their car payment and deal with a car accident, I'm like, oh, yeah, you're not a financial planner. You don't know how to handle money. You can't even handle a car issue that came up, and it set you totally back. That is the reality of it. I think you have a lot of people who people perceive as experts who aren't experts. And the reality is, if you're watching the financial news network, those people are just busy screaming to keep you around for the next commercial.
I'm glad you said that. And I should probably be candid with you. I completely agree. Been doing this for almost 2 decades. I've done literally nothing else, Rocky, in my life. And I don't plan on it. This is my purpose. I don't hang out with or have a single financial advisor friend. Not a big fan of them, quite frankly. Just not. Their stories don't do it for me. I'm sorry. And I'm just being candid. They don't. To me, I came into this business for a reason. It was purposeful. It wasn't a passion. It wasn't a money thing. It was for a purpose. I had no intentions of obviously I wanted to live a comfortable life and have a family. And, that's a part of building a career and a job. But it was not to go build and partner with some guys to go build a $5 billion assets under management firm. It wasn't. That was a blessing out of the work we were putting into it, because of our saying around here is simple and elegant. We do not sell things. We are your true old school money manager with planning philosophies at its root. We're not going and slinging whole life policies or REITs or a bunch of this kind of stuff that people do. And by the way, those do have their place. Don't get me wrong. We have clients with them. They do have their place, but I think it is important to look up your financial advisor, look up their U4, look up their registration. Do they have any complaints on those kind of things? And ask them in your discovery meeting, like, how is your financial situation? You're asking about me. I should know about you. Why not? I tell them, like, what do you want to know? Because it's crazy to me. And look, I hate to say it this way too, but it's like if I went to a doctor who's morbidly obese telling me about my health, I'd be like, yeah, man, I'm going to pass. Sorry, bud. Like, you're not the guy I want to receive the information from, quite frankly. So it's okay. Success can breed success. If you're having success through some things, and I tell clients this, I'm not out of an arrogant way, but we've had a lot of financial blessings that's come from some of actually a lot of the things that I'm employing with you in your own financial plan. Nothing was overnight. Nothing happened, overnight. All right. And again, everyone's financial goals are different for sure. And I do feel like intuition is a strong thing. So if you are meeting with someone or talking with advisors, or if you have them on, Rocky, and you're like, this guy, maybe you're feeling that about me. You won't tell me that, and I'm okay with that. But I think intuition does matter. So if you're sitting with that guy or that woman and they're not doing it for you in the first probably 20 minutes, your emotions are probably, remember, emotions are a good thing to have. That's a good example of intuition, right? Then move on.
Salespeople are really good about making you feel comfortable and getting you excited about becoming a millionaire this weekend. And it is hard to say no to that. That's just human nature. And so that's kind of that's what you're up against. And the problem comes up. Yeah. And I see this in every industry. It doesn't matter whether it's a financial planner, a real estate agent, or something else, right? The real estate agent comes and says, I can sell your house for $500,000, right? Yeah. The other real estate agent goes, hey, we just sold 10 houses that are exactly the same as yours, and they all sold for $400,000. Well, he says he can do it for $500,000. And so they sign with that guy, and 6 months later, the house is not sold. Mm-hmm. And that guy's coming back to them saying, well, your house, we probably got to sell it for $375,000. Now you're losing money, right? Yeah. Because of what you kind of got sold on. And I guess that comes back to people's personal greed, in a sense. It becomes like, or is it FOMO, fear of missing out? It all comes down to some sort of, again, human emotion and how we react to those human emotions.
To that point, I would say I agree with you. I really do. I mean, it's hard to know what is truth versus what is fiction in what they're saying. And there's usually always the good ones out there that are selling you on something. There's always some sort of truth to it. that you can attach to it, and then it becomes sort of like spin on it, if you will. But not to get into specifics, because that's not how we've ever approached anything. But I know completely who you're speaking about there. But I would say this: anytime you make a decision when it comes to money, I always think you should stop. You should stop and think about where you are currently in your life, in your season. What is going on elsewhere? How is your marriage? How are your relationship with your kids? Are you currently in a tiff, which happens all the time with maybe your spouse or maybe your business partner? Really check yourself at that time and place to make sure you're actually making a clear decision. You know what I mean? I mean, if you really backtrack on some of the mentions, the ideas you had there about maybe a house or something like that, why do you need, what is so big about that extra $100,000 versus the guy who sold it for 10 of them for $400,000, right? Was it a pride thing? You want to be the guy who was the one guy who could sell for $100,000 more? Was it a financial thing because you have a bunch of debt and you needed that extra $100,000, but you didn't find any other way you could pay that off? I mean, there's so many things you could consider there that has nothing to do with the house itself in that example. It could be where you're at in life, where your mindset's at, what trauma you're dealing with, whether it's big or small. I mean, there's just so many things that come into a decision we make that we're bringing in. Like every time I always had this imagery in my head, and it's kind of a dumb one, but every time you make a decision on our day, right, we're literally dragging around everything that we got going on into that decision. So just think about like the old school Santa Claus, just grabbing big bags behind you, and you're walking into some financial advisor's office. And no one's even mentioning the bags, by the way. And you're just walking in there with all this baggage and all this stuff you got going on, but you're talking about this one subject matter, but you're bringing in all this stuff to it, and you're going to make a decision on that without even mentioning what's going on over here. Right. And I think that's an important thing that we all need to bring up sometimes when we make these decisions, so that we don't have any regret. You don't want to have anything, and regret's hard, right? Because you don't, you said it, the FOMO thing, you don't want to miss out on something. But again, my experience has been tried and true, discipline and discernment is what will ultimately win out for your financial goals. I just believe that. These flashy situations, and it's only getting worse nowadays with social media, with everything that's out there in the news. I mean, it's just getting worse. So this behavioral psyche is just getting harder and harder for us to deal with sometimes, which is why I like talking about it. So how is the psychology of money different than the behavioral side of money? I'm not, speaking as a non-clinical psychologist by any means, I'm not entirely sure there's that much of a difference other than the way that we act it out. So there's one way in which we believe it at our core, like we think we believe it. That's the whole conscious and subconscious, right? Versus these little like subliminal things that we've been taught over our life, whether through, circumstances or just who we are from a family structure or whatever it might be, right? To then how we act it out. So I think the bridge in my mind would be from how we are perceiving money as a psychological, and then ultimately how we are using money becoming the behavioral side of it. And I think that bridge is a really important one for us to make sure that, again, to my analogy of the baggage, like what we're bringing in to the decisions we're actually making when it comes to money. And actually what got me on this, I've been talking about psychology of money for, probably 8-9 years, maybe 10 years now. I just really got fascinated with it after about 8 years in the business, just seeing so many clients and just realizing that a lot of it had nothing to, a lot of issues that we deal with, like we're problem solvers. Like we tend to, other than investors, we're problem solvers for our clients, right? And a lot of the problems that we deal with have it's money driven, but it has more to do with their perception and their emotions around the money than the problem itself. And the book that I read a couple of years ago, Morgan Housel's Psychology of Money, oh my gosh, I recommend it to everybody. I've read it a couple of times. It's just a great, fascinating book. And he illustrated, there's been plenty of books on psychology of money. I've got a couple back there, but the way he wrote his was very story driven and anecdotal. And anyways, I recommend it. It was really good. And I think how we perceive it and then ultimately how we act it out is somewhat the difference in my world, how I see clients go from psychological to behavioral when it comes to money.
And I've read his book and I concur with you. I think he does a great job of telling stories and helping connect the dots and help people truly understand how much they really need, what's reasonable, what's unreasonable, and what they need to do to get there. I know you keep talking about discipline, and I guess there's two sides to that equation. On the saving side, they've automated everything. Like, you don't even have to do much except set up the automations. Now, the discipline comes on the spending side of, as long as you stay within the cash in your bank, that's fine. It's whether you have, I guess, the discipline to stay within the cash in your bank. Credit cards make that harder.
Yeah, you also have the control of turning that automation on or off as well.
That takes work. Like, be lazy, turn it on and be lazy, right?
You know, and that actually, I've seen that, the default ratio sometimes, like in 401k plans, you know, if you think about it, one of the largest assets we all have in the U.S. is across the board as a personal asset within our household is typically our house as an illiquid asset, meaning it's not something you can just, you know, spend tangibly, right? Our largest tends to be our largest liquid asset we have in the U.S. across the board tends to be our 401k or our retirement accounts. And I would argue this, and I've thought about this a lot. I don't know that it's so much about the investments or the advisor you chose. I mean, those are all important, don't get me wrong. But I would argue in doing as many financial plans as I've ran in nearly 20 years, it is the one asset class that, to your point, Rocky, we've set it and we forget it. We've set it on a biweekly contribution. And like you said, it takes work to change it. So if you're lazy, you just don't change it, right? So in the background, you have this $50 a month, $100 a month, maybe even $500 a month. Hopefully you're maxing out at some point in your career. But that's if you look at proof in the pudding, that's what I mean about discipline. You have a 30-year career, let's just say, or 30 years of working and you were contributing to a 401k that entire time, right? And you think about that, you're getting paid 24 to 26 times a year, that's dollar cost averaging into your investments. Just look at the sheer numbers of that over that time period. You're literally doing the one main component that matters so much, which is discipline. You're actively, on a consistent basis, putting into a retirement plan for your tomorrow. And imagine if we took that same philosophy and took it into our after-tax savings, or like you said, our budget, or our what's staying in the savings account not being spent, right? Because you're right, we made it easy. The ERISA governed industry, you know, think about this, 401k industry has only been around for 50 years. You know, Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA, has really only been around since the early 70s. And this is not a 100-year-old situation. I mean, our grandparents did not have retirement plans like we have today. And even our parents' generation had pensions, and we don't even have pensions as much as we did before. There's just so many things that are important there when you talk about the discipline. And we have it in our Social Security, for example. Everyone's paying Social Security, for example. We have no choice in that, but that's a discipline. You know, it's going into paying us. So if we start implementing those little things in our own lives, you can see how it actually adds up.
I don't know that our grandparents retired. They just kept working.
Pretty much.
It was a different time back then, right? You know, people didn't expect to stop working and do nothing, so to speak.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't as leisure of a world as we have today. I mean, remember, I always tell people this, we're only one generation away, technically, from fighting 2 world wars. And I always share people a lot. I got in this tangent a couple of years ago, but we're about to lose this generation. And it's one of the best generations, obviously. I think I'm obviously, that's obviously a subjective opinion there, but I did a show myself with my grandfather, actually. He's 93 years old. And I had a conversation with him about a month ago, and I put it on our Make Your Money Matter show. And his philosophies, and to this exact comment we're making about where they were at their time period. I mean, he was a farm boy. He was one of 8 kids. They had no money, but his comment was, I never had money, but I never was without, is what he said. And I think it's an interesting subject matter when you think about it. Like, you know, he didn't have the new shoes, the new Nikes, or all the stuff that we think we need, right? This goes into the philosophy of the need versus want situation. We have so blurred the lines on those over the past 30, 40, 50 years of what we think we need, but we actually just want. And they are not the same. Because our past generations was very different. You need food and water to sustain life. All right. You don't need to dine at a $400 dinner 2 days a week. All right. You don't need new shoes every other month. Do we want it? Sure. Can we have access to it? Yes. Do we have access to it faster than we did before? Yes. Do we have access to it to, you know, pay monthly now instead of all at once. Yes, this generation, that generation didn't have it. We have to deal with all this stuff nowadays. And so I feel sometimes I'm like the lone soldier out here just saying, hey, look, somehow we got to turn these guys down. Yeah, don't click the button to say pay over 6 months. Just if you have the cash, you have it. If you don't, you don't. But it's so much easier said than done. I'm well aware.
I think that's a mentality. There are people who just think it's normal to have payments. And if you actually talk about that, credit cards didn't come around till the 50s.
Right.
Like the whole concept of borrowing and spending is just as new as many of the topics in the past. If you didn't have cash, you didn't buy stuff. People actually saved for Christmas, not, before Christmas, not after Christmas.
Yeah. And there's a lot of investing philosophy still based on a lot of those that still work, and you're right. You're right there. I think we are just so used to having payments nowadays. It's become just a normality, and I would love to, over the coming years, to dissect into that and with our clients and just kind of think how much of that was of the times versus how much of that was parents or mentors or people around them that have the same thing. And it became just a social norm. I mean, it could be a mixture of all those things.
I think a lot of it is social norm. I think it's, hey, I work at this job and all these people have X and they have payments, so should I. And I think that is much more what it's about. What I don't think people realize, and it's going to be a major eye-opening shock if it's not already starting to be, is your low interest rate loans are no more low interest rate loans except for your locked-in mortgage. The cost of buying something, the interest is now going to exceed the actual cost again. And as inflation roars, people will start to see long-term that it gets very difficult to deal with these types of things. And I think we haven't experienced that, and we haven't had a downturn in 15 years. So those two things will be wake-ups.
Well, and I think, I mean, that's why I'm a big preacher of, look, speaking of debt or payments, I mean, debt can be useful if you have certain components to it. It's fixed, it's low. Hopefully it's tax deductible. Mortgage is the biggest one that comes up. Fine. If it's manageable, if it's low and you can create arbitrage around it, I mean, you can make money on top of it or more than what you're paying, then great. I think we have to think about this because, again, this is not that long ago. I mean, we think it's long ago, but again, 1-2 generations at most. Early 1900s, the first main payment we became socially normal was our mortgage payment. Early 1900s, we owned land. We owned our ranches. And anytime there was something being done within the family to buy other land or whatever it was come from the family. We still have what's called the affiliated family rate, the AFR rate, to this day. And that was the rate used. And by the way, that rate's used mostly now to alleviate it being a gift versus a loan with an interfamily discussion. But that was the rate typically used and charged before banks became the intermediary. Banks became the intermediary in the early 1900s, and it became the social norm. There's a whole industry around that now. The mortgage industry is literally around that, making payments acceptable, palatable, affordable, and then we just, like you said, in the 50s and 60s, we basically delved into all the layaway stuff and then into the interest occurring credit cards and the national credit cards themselves. And again, these are all things these aren't going to go away. So the point I'm bringing up is really the fact that if you have those things, it becomes accessible, yes, but you also want to make sure that you have the planning around that so it doesn't get too out of control, right? Because that's when it starts getting bad. And you can't really build wealth when you have an anchor holding you down like payments or debt. Because if it's going to stuff that you bought yesterday, then you have no option for your tomorrow. So I think it's important as you kind of put those things into context and build a financial plan and really build your investing around that.
I concur. You kind of mentioned this at the beginning when you were telling your story. How much does God and spirituality play into money decisions and money behaviors?
For me personally, everything. And I think we all don't realize it, but the good book talks about that more than love. People don't realize that. The subject of money And everyone always brings up the one, 1 Timothy 6:10, right? They always bring up that one. They'll bring up the love of money is the root of all evil. Or they say money is the root of all evil, which is the total misnomer. It's the love of money. And it's very conceptual. Most of the parables he talks about in the New Testament is all about money. And he knew it was going to be a grip on our lives. He knew it. He talks about debt, talks about what not to owe, pay unto Caesar what is Caesar's. I mean, there is countless parables, discussions, notations on this. And I think it plays into a lot of what he knew then that we're going to deal with. It was a commodity that was going to be hitting on all of our insecurities, our pride, our ego, our worth, which is what he talks about most, right? Our worth and our identity is literally wrapped up into how much we make or what we're worth at Wise. And I got this from a lot of prayer over my years, and I talk about this a lot. I think if you really break this down for yourself and you can be candid with yourself and honest, what you're worth has nothing to do with in your bank account. What you're worth actually has more to do with if you lost everything today. Are you still standing on your 2 feet, feeling like a son or a daughter of God, feeling like you're still out there with a purpose-driven mission? I mean, those all things matter. It has nothing to do with money. When God even talks about tithing and offering, right? He does not want you to do it out of obligation. He wants to do it because he wants your heart. He could care less about money. Why would he care about something that's already his? Like, why would he? Logically, think about that. Why, so it's like he's always like showing us that, we're putting so much attention, so much stress on something that he's like, if I can take care of the sparrows, you don't think I'm going to take care of you? And so I think there's a lot that we can glean from that. At least more than anything, you can gain some peace, right? Some understanding of peace that transcends this world is what he says. And we can get some peace around the fact that we're never going to know everything. We might think we will. We might think we want to. And we might think we're going to, know how to make money and know how to be the best investor in this, that, and the other. But the reality is he can take it away from you any second. And the sooner you know that, the sooner you come to grips with that, the sooner you'll start realizing that you can't take it with you. And it shows you a little bit how to use it. I always say this to clients, like, that's not an excuse to just go and spend everything though, right? People use that sometimes as an excuse, and I think you just need to, I always pray on it. You want to be a good steward with the capital you've been given, the blessings you've been given. Use it right, use it appropriate, and just really check yourself. Whatever, back to the conversation we had earlier, whatever investment you're looking at, whatever purchase you're looking at, whether it's a debt obligation or whatever it might be, really make sure that that's what you should be spending the money on, and discussing with yourself if it's a need or a want. Because I think if you really are honest with yourself, you'll find that a lot of it's more wants than needs. We have a lot more wants than needs. There is no doubt about that. And thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate it. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life? For me personally, prayer. I could elaborate big time on that one, but it's simple as that. The abundance for me, and I know we just talked about it a little bit too, and not to get too spiritual, but it's one of those things where abundance has, again, a connotation that people think, again, relates to amassing some wealth or something like that. And I think if you think about an abundant life, what does it actually mean to you? To me, in my prayers, what has been shown to me is it means time with my family. It means the freedom and flexibility to be able to go pick up my son from school and take him to his sporting events. It means, availability for my clients and for my friends and for my community. So abundance to me, how I live it is through coming to peace with the fact that I don't need to be what this world makes me feel like I should be. As a man, I can only speak as a man, as a man of this world, as a provider, as a husband, as a father, just knowing I'm right in that alignment and then building what I know is right for my family lets me to lead to abundance for sure. And that's an amazing viewpoint. I very much concur with a lot of what you've said. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner? What did I learn later? You know what? The discipline. If I had known if I was talking to my 20-year-old self right now, I would say, look, man, I've gone through the next 15 years you're going to live right now. Just don't stop that 401k contribution because of the car you wanted when you were 21. don't stop the 401k contribution for whatever. I would go back and speak to what I firmly believe today that I share with my clients. I share on our show. I share it on this show, that discipline is one of the most, the best traits we can all have to be successful in any category of our life.
And my listeners know I started saving at 21 and I just kept cranking up the notch. And it is that discipline more than anything that has allowed me to have success.
Yeah.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
I would actually give them a verse. I would say, look, read James 1:27. It very clearly states that the only religion that God cares about is caring for widows and orphans and not becoming of this world. And I think an 18-year-old who hear that, even if they didn't come from faith, even if they don't even believe in, that's not the point. If they read that and see it abstractly for what it is, falling into some routine of a religion is not what he asks for. Care for those around us, especially the ones that are suffering, and just don't be transformed by this world. And by the way, that'll actually play into this subject matter too with money. If you're not transforming to this world, you're not needing the next new thing that Mr. Jones down the street has, right? Guess what? Your savings account looks a little bit better. So I would give them that verse. That's what I would give them.
And we didn't talk about this and it wasn't the purpose, but it seems like all of this comes from a very spiritual background and it all flows. And it's one of the major tenets that we talk about. It wasn't today's topic, but all of these do flow together. And I think people need to realize that it all is threaded together. And those who can thread it all together are the ones who get to enjoy the journey. If people would like to learn more about you, check out your podcast or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, our show is probably the best way. You can watch and subscribe to our channel on YouTube at the Make Your Money Matter. Let's Make Your Money Matter with Brad Barrett on YouTube. You can also go to our website at onecapital.com. You can meet, learn more about myself, a lot of our advisors, our team, our offices and where they're located. We also have a corresponding podcast, the Make Your Money Matter podcast, which is found on any other platform, Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, Spotify, all the good stuff. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Do you have discipline when it comes to money? Is it serving you well in that you get to enjoy your money as much as you do saving it? It's a constant choice, living for today, preparing for tomorrow. The reality of the situation, if you look around, most people have zero discipline with their money, and it doesn't matter how much they make. The other thing we're going to have to be faced with is inflation. It is driving up the cost of retirement, along with our current retirement expenses. If we don't pay attention, we find ourselves out of balance, and then you need to make an adjustment. And I got to tell you, it is much easier to do this when time is on your side. You wait to the last couple of years and you're locked and loaded, and by then, the answer is work more. Do you get caught up in FOMO or some slick sales presentation? I know I do. There's no shortcut. Take it from the master, Warren Buffett, a lifetime of work. And he's in his 90s and he's had a long time to compound, and it serves him and Charlie well. Take a moment, check in on your money behaviors, and make whatever changes you think are best for you. You know someone who needs to listen to this conversation on money behaviors? Why don't you share the episode with them? I would appreciate it. Great way to say thank you. Next week, we have on Andrew Daniel to talk about unleashing your potential, breaking through the barriers that hold you back. I've had a ton. Such is life. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.